The table was too long for a family dinner. 12 seats, crystal glasses lined like soldiers. Napkins folded into stiff triangles. I was placed near the center, but it felt like a stage, every glance down the table brushing past me like I wasn't meant to speak. Conversations bubbled around me about international schools, lakefront homes, boutique investments. None of it touched my plate. Adeline Carr, Valeria's mother, sat directly across. Her hair was lacquered into place, her pearls resting like punctuation at her collar. She hadn't looked at me all evening until dessert arrived. Then she reached forward, leaned close, and locked eyes with me. "This is what you deserve," she said. Her voice didn't rise. It sliced. Then came the spit. A sharp, wet sound as it landed right in the middle of the white porcelain. On the lemon custard I had brought. A recipe I'd made for every celebration since Ricardo was 10. I didn't move. I didn't gasp. My fingers stayed curled around the edge of the napkin in my lap. Ricardo's voice slipped beside me, low and rehearsed. "Don't provoke her, Mom." No one said a word, not even a cough. The silverware quieted. I stood, slowly folded my napkin with care, and placed it on the table beside my untouched dessert. My chair made no noise against the wood. "I need some air," I said. I wasn't asking. In the hallway, I kept walking until I reached the coat closet. I didn't take my coat. I took out my phone. My fingers didn't shake. I opened the thread marked GH and typed 3 words. "Execute the plan." The message sent without hesitation. The phone slipped back into my purse like it belonged there. Behind me, laughter started up again. Someone poured wine. A chair scraped back into place. I pressed my palm to the front door before stepping outside the night air cooler than I expected. It smelled like grass clippings and pine. I walked toward my car without looking back, not even when the porch light blinked on above me. The house was quiet when I returned. I didn't turn on the overhead light, just the lamp in the hallway, soft and warm. I slipped off my shoes and placed them beside the door. The silence wasn't heavy. It was honest. I walked into the laundry room and pulled out the blouse I had meant to wear tonight. Pale, pressed, sleeveless. It hadn't felt right when I tried it on. I ironed it anyway. The hiss of steam filled the air, steady and clean, the kind of sound that didn't ask for anything in return. On the wall behind me hung framed sketches, bodices, pleats, silk illusions, gowns I'd made for other women's daughters. I'd shaped fabric to fit joy-stitched hems into place for sweet 16s and graduation nights. Not one of those women ever spit on my work. Ricardo used to sit beside me as I cut patterns on the floor. He'd ask questions about fabric weight, about why some thread unraveled while others held tight. Once when he was 9, he punched a boy in the mouth for calling me a maid. The school called it inappropriate behavior. I called it love. I ironed the last sleeve and set the blouse on a hanger. Now he lives across town, in a house guarded by a gate I need a code to enter. He calls me Mom, but the word has changed shape. Polite, careful, almost administrative. His voice on the phone always sounds like there's someone else listening. Valeria's mother once introduced me at a fundraiser as Ricardo's family from before, as if I were a starter version. A trial run. I used to think distance was made of miles, but it turns out it's built from tiny silences stacked too close together. Things he didn't say. Invitations that never came. Apologies that got swallowed in the name of keeping things smooth. I turned off the iron, hung the cord carefully behind the hook, and walked into the kitchen. The leftovers were still in my bag. I placed them in the fridge without looking and wiped the counter clean with one slow motion. The invitation came by text, short and without punctuation. Mateo's birthday is Sunday, 2 p.m. No address, just a pin drop. I wrapped the quilt the night before cream flannel on one side, tiny blue whales on the other. I tied it with cotton ribbon and slipped a note inside that said, for when the world feels too loud. When I arrived, I could hear the noise from the driveway. Laughter music, the echo of bouncing shoes against tile. I rang the bell and waited. No one answered. After a minute, I tried the handle. It opened. Inside, Valeria's sister took the package from my hands without meeting my eyes. She said, "You can leave your coat by the door," then disappeared into another room. The gift never made it to the main table. I saw it later, tucked beside a stack of empty soda boxes near the sideboard. The house smelled like frosting and something roasted with honey. I stepped into the kitchen to find Ricardo, but he was on a call waving me off with a quick 1 minute. I never got the rest of it. At dinner, the table stretched across the room like a runway. There were place cards, small, folded, all printed in cursive. Mine wasn't among them. Valeria pointed toward a chair near the end. "We added one," she said, already, walking away. I sat beside the trash bin and a space heater that clicked every few seconds. Mateo was in a high chair near the center, flanked by Adeline and Valeria. Adeline dipped a silver spoon into mashed avocado and cooed. "He's too sensitive for heavy fabric. That quilt will just make him itch." She didn't lower her voice. I watched as he opened packages from boutiques with tags still on. Soft toys, educational kits, a monogrammed blanket in pale gray. Mine stayed wrapped. No one asked where it came from. No one noticed it hadn't moved. By the time cake was served, I'd already made my decision to leave early. I slipped out quietly after the candles were blown, just as someone turned up the music for dancing. It was spring when Ricardo first called me in tears. Valeria's loans had ballooned, he said. They'd miscalculated the interest, and payments were swallowing their checks. I didn't ask how it had gotten that bad. I just opened the drawer in the bedroom, the one with the envelope marked emergency, and pulled out $15,000. I brought it in cash, folded into a plain white envelope. No conditions, no reminders. Just a kiss on his forehead, and the same words I'd used when he scraped his knees as a boy. "It's handled. You're all right now." When they bought their first house, I saw the listing online. 3 bedrooms, garden in the back, open kitchen. A real milestone. Ricardo mentioned they were short on closing costs. I wired the money the same day, more than they asked for. I didn't expect my name on the deed, but when Valeria later told her cousin we built this from scratch, just the two of us, I felt something shift beneath my ribs. Not break, just tilt. After Mateo was born, I spent a full day preparing soup, chicken, rice, soft vegetables, the kind mothers make when the world is new and swollen with worry. I knocked on their door, holding it in both hands. Valeria opened it just wide enough to step halfway out. She smiled, but it didn't touch her eyes. "Next time, text first," she said, taking the container like it might leak. I nodded, stepped back, and said, "I understood." But something inside me folded shut that day. Not from anger, from clarity. They only needed me when the numbers didn't add up, when things were raw and urgent. But once stability returned, so did their amnesia. Love in that house had become something transactional. And I had given more than I ever meant to. I left the hospital and went home to update the trust. Quietly. Without credit. Just like everything else I'd done. The runner had taken me 3 weeks to finish. Cream cotton, tiny, hand-knotted stitches, a pattern inspired by river currents. Nothing loud. Nothing begging for attention. Just careful work, the kind you notice only if you slow down enough to look. I folded it into a linen box and brought it to dinner with both hands, like an offering. When the conversation paused long enough, I slid it across the counter toward Adeline. She looked at it, not like cloth, but like evidence. "How quaint," she murmured, brushing a fingertip along the thread before turning back to her guests. "No thank you." No acknowledgement. Just quaint. During dessert, as glasses chimed and silver spoons tapped porcelain, Adeline rose to give a toast. To refinement, she said, eyes sweeping the room. To taste. To those who understand the value of real elegance, her gaze skipped over me like a pebble on water. There was polite laughter, nodding. Someone murmured agreement. Valeria puffed a quiet, proud sigh. My name never entered her mouth. I set my fork down, intending to stand, to quietly excuse myself, to disappear before the room remembered I existed. That was when it happened. She leaned forward, lips curled, not in anger, but entitlement. Fast. Sharp. Then the sound, small, wet, deliberate, as the insult landed in the center of my plate. A perfect, dark mark on bright custard. This is what you deserve. The room inhaled. No one exhaled. Ricardo didn't turn his head toward her. He turned toward me. Don't provoke her, Mom. He whispered, his voice, thin, stretched tight between shame and convenience. Something closed in me then. Not my heart. A door. At home, I unpinned my hair, washed my hands, and unlocked the safe beneath my sewing cabinet. The envelope sat exactly where I'd left it, unopened, reserved, labeled in my handwriting, hold only if dismissed. My thumb brushed the edges before I lifted it out calm, in a way that surprised even me. The lawyer's office was quiet, the kind of quiet I liked, leather chairs that didn't squeak, a clock that ticked gently in the background, and no one asking if I was still working on sewing things. Mr. Harlan had been my attorney for years. He knew better than to make small talk. I handed him the envelope first. He opened it slowly, scanning the documents inside without raising his eyebrows. The first was the deed to a small property I owned outside Tucumcari, 2 acres, a house half built by my brother and me before he passed. I'd never told Ricardo about it. Next came the paperwork for the trust fund established when Mateo was born, funded quietly over 6 years. It was still in my name with disbursement rights, listed under specific terms. Mr. Harlan nodded, flipping to the next page. These transfers, he said, tapping the bank records, are they the ones used for the house? I nodded. Dates and amounts were highlighted. The payments I made, the money that built their foundation, unseen, uncredited, but always there. Then I handed him the USB. He looked at it, then at me. What's on here? Footage, I said. From gifts I gave them. The baby monitor I sent when Mateo was born had a dual function. The speaker was faulty, but the lens worked fine. The photo frame I gave them last Christmas had a motion-activated camera embedded near the corner. I hadn't intended to spy. I just stopped trusting what they told me after the third canceled visit. And the second time Valeria called me difficult, when she thought I wasn't within earshot. On that USB were casual conversations, mocking ones. Ricardo calling me fragile. Valeria joking about moving farther away. Adeline saying, just push her out slowly. She won't even notice. Mr. Harlan didn't smile. He just nodded, once slid the drive into his desk drawer and said, you want action, not noise. Exactly, I said. I wasn't after punishment. I was after proof. Proof of what they thought I'd never see and what I'd always known in my gut. The letter went out by courier. No email, no call. Just white paper, black ink, and a firm signature on the bottom. Mr. Harlan said it was better that way. Clean. Professional. No room for misinterpretation. It arrived on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, my phone rang his number, lighting up the screen like a warning. I let it ring twice before answering. Mom, Ricardo's voice came sharp, tight. What the hell is this? I stayed quiet. This letter, freezing the funds, redirecting the trust. You blindsided me. Still, I waited. Let him say it all. Do you even realize how this makes me look? Do you know what Valeria is saying? She's furious. You've made it seem like we can't be trusted. That was when I spoke. No, I said. I made it clear that I no longer will be. He went silent. I could hear him breathing, pacing the same way he used to when he was little, and caught in a lie. But this wasn't a scraped knee or a broken vase. This was a line drawn, and he had stepped over it for the last time. "I never thought you'd do something like this," he finally said. I almost laughed, not out of joy, but disbelief. "And I never thought you'd sit beside a woman who spit on your mother's plate and ask her to stay quiet. That wasn't the time." "No," I said, again, calmly. "It never was. That's the problem." He didn't hang up, but the call didn't last much longer either. He said he needed time. I said I'd already taken mine. After the line went dead, I placed the phone on the counter and sat by the window. The light was soft, just starting to shift across the hardwood. I didn't feel regret, just the kind of stillness that comes when something has finally settled into place. Outside, the mail truck pulled up to the curb. Another letter had arrived, this one addressed to me, written in Valeria's handwriting. Valeria's letter was a strange mix of polished apology and veiled resentment. She used phrases like misunderstanding heat of the moment and unfortunate optics. At the end, she asked for a meeting to clear the air. I didn't respond. By the end of the week, I'd heard through a neighbor whose cousin happened to sit on the same board as Adeline. That word had spread. Not about the spit, not directly, but about an incident involving poor treatment of an elder guest. Her social circle started pulling back. A fundraiser was quietly canceled. Ricardo didn't call again, but I received a formal notice that his firm had launched a compliance inquiry. They wanted clarification on the down payment for his house funds, traced back to accounts in my name. I sent what was requested. Neatly scanned, well-labeled, time-stamped. While they scrambled, I got to work. The foundation papers had been in a folder for years, tucked away in my sewing cabinet under bolts of fabric I no longer had the energy to cut. My husband's name was on the draft Emilio J. Quinn Foundation. We'd talked about starting it when we retired. He died before we could. I finished it alone. It wasn't large, not by modern standards, but it was enough. Enough to offer 3 grants each year to women over 50 who wanted to start again, open a cafe, return to school, buy a kiln or a truck or a fresh lease on land. I didn't ask for reports or updates, just honesty, just effort. I didn't announce the launch, no ribbon cutting, just a room in a library and a table with plain coffee and folded pamphlets. I wore my softest shoes and the brooch Emilio gave me the year we eloped. No one asked for my credentials. I just stood beside the table and handed out envelopes. Someone asked quietly why I was doing this now. I said, because I was told I no longer mattered, and I needed to remind myself that I do. That night, I returned home to find an unexpected knock at the door. The knock came just after sunrise. I was still in my robe, tea warming my palms. I opened the front door to find Ricardo standing outside the gate, Mateo in his arms, a worn backpack slung over his shoulder. No Valeria, no explanation. I didn't ask. I stepped aside and unlatched the gate. He walked in slowly, as if unsure whether the ground would hold. Mateo wriggled free as soon as his feet touched the gravel path and ran straight into the house past the living room toward the sewing room, like he'd always known the way. In the corner, my old sewing box sat with its lid cracked open. Inside, tucked among fabric scraps and measuring tape, was a soft bear I'd stitched months ago, a quiet hope I never wrapped, never delivered. Mateo pulled it out with both hands and sat cross-legged on the floor. Ricardo stayed by the doorway, rubbing his hands together like he had something to fix. "I know this doesn't fix it," he said. I didn't respond. He looked down at the floor, then back at me. "I let them make you feel small. I thought staying out of it meant I was keeping things steady. That neutrality was peace." I shook my head once. "Peace without respect," I said, "is just silence in better clothes." He nodded, eyes damp. "I'm sorry, Mom." The words didn't undo what had been done, but they came without defense, without detour. That mattered. We didn't talk much after that. I made Mateo toast and peeled him an orange. Ricardo sat at the kitchen table and watched, not speaking, not moving to interfere. When he finally stood, he said they'd be back next weekend if I was open to it. "I'm here," I said. "Whether you come back or not." He nodded. "We will." As they left, Mateo turned around and waved the bear's paw at me, grinning. I stood in the doorway long after they'd gone, my tea cold on the counter. I didn't feel healed. I felt human again. And that was enough to carry me into the next morning. A year is a quiet thing when you let it be. The days pass without urgency, without spectacle. I no longer wait by the phone wondering if there'll be an invitation. I don't ask. I host when I choose to, how I choose to. Simple meals, fresh breadfruit from the market. No performance, just presence. Mateo comes on Sundays now. He's grown taller, more curious. He brings me found things, buttons, leaves, stories from his week. Sometimes Ricardo joins him, sometimes not. We don't talk much about the past. The silence between us is softer now, not laced with apology, just understanding. He fixes the garden hose when it leaks, brings me coffee when he remembers how I like it. The sewing room still smells of starch and wood polish. I keep it clean, not because anyone might come, but because it matters to me. The rhythm of folding fabric, threading needles, shaping something from nothing that never left me. The bear Mateo plays with sits on the windowsill. Between visits, its seams reinforced its smile, lopsided from wear. In the bottom drawer of the buffet, wrapped in tissue, is the table runner I brought to that dinner. I haven't used it. Not out of bitterness, just clarity. It's not for show. It's not for proving anything to anyone. It's for me, and maybe for Mateo someday if he ever asks who made it. Adeline hasn't spoken to me. Valeria sent a card at Christmas, unsigned, typed. I recycled it with the rest of the mail. What I've learned is that some things rot in silence, but others bloom. Some relationships return reshaped and unsure like new seedlings in old soil. Others stay buried. I didn't rewrite my story to be louder. I rewrote it to be mine. And now, when I walk through my home, I notice the space I hold, the sound of my footsteps, the weight of my breath. No one tells me where to sit. No one edits the guest list. I live in the center of my life, not waiting, not asking, just here.